Hey guys, welcome back to the office. It's Dr. Arakat. First and foremost, thank you so much for all the positivity and all the nice comments. It's nice to see that you guys are enjoying the channel so far. In the last video, we talked about cavities and toothpaste and what exactly cavities are. And I was really happy to see at how many people were actually benefiting from that content. I mean, many comments of people saying, wow, I never knew what a cavity was before. Now I know what it is. Now I'm gonna start brushing. I never used to brush every day. Now I'm gonna try to brush every day. And that's honestly the whole point of this channel. It's to give knowledge, and not only to get the knowledge, but to actually put it to use for healthier lives and healthier lifestyles. One of the most popular questions from the last video was about teeth whitening. What's the best way to whiten teeth? How do I whiten my teeth? And I'm going to get to that, I promise. We're gonna have a whole episode just on teeth whitening, and I'm actually inviting a cosmetic dentist who does a lot of whitening to help us with that episode. But before we get to the whitening, we have to make sure we have a good healthy mouth, a good healthy foundation before we think about the whitening. So there was very good questions as well on oral health, and one of the questions was, hey Dr. Arakat, I had a question. I was wondering, why does the gum tissue start to build up and get big and puffy if you don't brush for a while? And on that same note, many other questions saying, why do my gums bleed when I brush, and so forth and so on. And that brings us to the subject of gingivitis. And you know, gingivitis is a word that we've heard many times. I'm sure all of you have heard the term or the word gingivitis, whether it was on TV, in a commercial, in school. But how many of us actually know what gingivitis is? I'm sure a lot of you do, and I'm sure a lot of you have an idea, and I'm sure some don't even know what it is at all. And as you know, I like to explain things in a way that anyone can understand, and today we're gonna answer the question, what is gingivitis and how do I prevent it? And if I have it, how do I make it go away? Let's start with the word itself. It's gingivitis. At the end of the word, it's itis, I-T-I-S. And in scientific terms, in the medical terminology, itis means inflammation of something. Something's getting inflamed. So some people get appendicitis. That's inflammation of the appendix, right? You also hear the word tonsillitis. That's inflammation of the tonsils. If I say I have fingeritis, that means my finger is inflamed. I mean, there's no really term that's called fingeritis, but I'm just saying that to give you guys, to bring the point home. Okay, so itis means inflammation of. The first part of that word is gingiva. Gingiva is another word for gums. It's a scientific term for gums, the gums that we have in our mouth. So gums are gingiva. Gingiva are gums. It's the same exact thing. It's just two different ways of saying the same exact thing. So gingivitis is inflammation of the gums around the teeth. And that's a very bad thing. So now that we know what it means, we have to know what causes inflammation of the gums. What causes gingivitis? And to explain that, I want to introduce the immune cells that are in our body. So all of us have an army of good guy cells in our bodies that are going around and around nonstop, and they're called the immune cells. It's a whole army, and their only purpose in life is to fight the bad guys, to fight all the bacteria that come into our bodies, to fight the viruses, to fight any bad stuff. So when you have a cold, when you have a flu, whatever it is, your immune cells are the guys that go and fight for you and keep you healthy, okay? So as we stated in the last video about the cavities, if you haven't watched that video, I highly recommend you watch that video because it's a good introduction, and it will also help understand this video much more. So as we said before, there are millions and millions of bacteria that live in our mouth. And some of these bacteria love to hang out and live on the teeth. That's where they like to do their business, okay? And when I say do their business, I mean they secrete all this acid and all these toxins that damage our teeth and could damage other things as well. I want to show you some simple tooth anatomy, okay? Every tooth in the mouth is held in by bone. This lower jawbone and this upper jawbone. That bone's function is to hold the tooth, okay? And around the bone is where the gingiva is. So it's like layers. You have the tooth that's held in by the bone, and then on top of the bone, you have a layer of gums, the pink stuff, the gums, okay? So it's 3 layers. But what we have to understand is that between the gums and between the tooth, there's actually, if you look here, a small gap, okay? There's a gap between the tooth and the gums. And some of these bacteria are so sneaky, the ones that like to live on our teeth, they like to go inside that gap. It's like their hideout, right? And they go inside that gap and they do their business in the gaps. They secrete all this acid, all this toxins, they just pour it inside that gap. So the body doesn't like that, right? The brain tells the body, hey, immune cells, good guy cells, go there right now and fight those bacteria that are secreting all this bad stuff in the gaps. So the troops get ready, the immune cells get ready, and they come to the gums, they come to the mouth, and they literally start having a battle with the bacteria in our gum gaps. Okay, that's literally what happens. You have the good guy cells, the immune cells, and the bacteria fighting in a war right inside those gaps between the teeth and the gums. And that war between the good guy cells and the bacteria is what causes inflammation of the gums. Okay, that's what it is. It's that fight. And you can think about it like if there's like a real battle somewhere on earth, right? You have two armies fighting, there's gonna be a lot of damage wherever they're fighting. Trees will get blown down, you'll have bombs making holes in the floor, and etc., etc. There's damage wherever there's a fight. And the same thing applies to the mouth and the gums. There's a fight going on in those gaps, and it's going to lead to damage, and that damage starts off with inflammation of the gums. The more and more and more the gums get inflamed, the redder the gums get. They can become red, they become puffy, they become boggy, they become bloody, they start to hurt, and every time you brush, they just bleed because there's a war going on within them. That's why people get bloody gums, painful gums, red gums, and swollen gums. So those are all signs of gingivitis, or inflammation of the gums, which is caused between the war between your good guy immune cells and the bacteria fighting in that little gap between the tooth and the gums. So now that we understand what gingivitis is, I'm going to show you some pictures. So this first picture shows perfectly healthy, great gums, or gingiva. And gums are supposed to be pink, not red. They're supposed to be pink, they're supposed to be firm, and they're supposed to be, not puffy at all. Like, not flabby. You want to be toned and muscular, like, toned and fit and firm. So fit, firm, pink. That's good gingiva. Now, what happens is, this picture shows actual calculus and plaque that's building around the teeth. Remember how we said in the last video, some of these bacteria, they like to make homes on our teeth? That home of bacteria is called plaque and then calculus. And that's what you see here. It literally gets stuck to the tooth. You see that? And that's bacteria just attaching and living on the teeth, like millions of bacteria. That's not good. You don't want your teeth to get to that stage. If they have, it's not a big, it's not the end of the world. We can still fix it. But once the bacteria take hold and make a home and the war starts happening, then the gums turn like this. See how they're very red? They're bloodshot. That's not healthy, okay? And then they get boggy and puffy and they become very, very painful. And then the worst, if it gets really, really inflamed, and warning, these pictures aren't, very nice to look at. Some people might get grossed out, but it is what it is. This is severe gingivitis. Completely boggy, not firm, not pink, really, really bad stuff. So it's a progression. It never happens, overnight. It's slow. First the bacteria make homes, then the war happens, then they become red, then they become boggy and swollen and really, really bad, okay? So we don't want it to get there. Now, there's one good news about gingivitis, and that is all the damage that is caused by gingivitis is reversible, meaning all the damage that's done can be taken away as if nothing happened. That's the beauty. That's great. No matter how bad it gets, can always be fully reversed. So think of it like a small war. The war only lasts like a day or two and it wasn't that severe and there wasn't much damage. Whatever damage that was done could be fully fixed, and that town or that land could be brought up exactly like it was before the war, as if nothing happened. That's the beauty with gingivitis. It could be reversed, and I'm going to tell you how to reverse it in a second. Now, we're not going to talk about what happens after gingivitis, but if the war keeps going and going and going, gingivitis turns into something much, much worse, much more severe, called periodontitis. That's a different episode, but the bad thing about periodontitis is the damage there cannot be reversed. It's irreversible. meaning once that damage is done, it's done forever. So we do not want it to get to periodontitis. And again, that's a different lecture, but just know that if the war is prolonged too much, gingivitis turns into periodontitis, which is way worse than just gingivitis. So to wrap things up, how do we prevent gingivitis? And two, if we already have gingivitis, how do we make it go away? How do we make our gums stop bleeding? First answer, I know you guys already know it because it was part of the first lecture, it's brushing. Because like we said before, all brushing really does is it physically pushes the bacteria off the teeth. It pushes the bacteria off the gums. And if the bacteria don't have a chance to make homes and release all their toxins and their poisons, they can't do any damage, right? So you have to brush, and I'm going to show you correct brushing techniques on this model of how to specifically target gingivitis. But that's one, brushing. Two is flossing, right? Because sometimes the brush can't get deep in those gaps to get all those bacteria that are deep down inside. That's where floss comes in. You floss and the floss goes way under the gums, way into those gaps and gets those bacteria out. Listen, all flossing is good. If it's easier for you to use a water floss, use a water floss. If you want to use a water pick, use a water pick, because it's all doing the same thing. You're just splashing the bacteria off. You're physically moving them off. So all forms of flossing are better than no flossing, okay? And third, antibacterial mouth washes, right? Because the mouthwash that kills the bacteria. Because if the bacteria are killed, again, they can't do damage. Now, I like to use non-alcoholic mouthwash because it doesn't burn my mouth and I can keep it in my mouth longer for it to kill more bacteria. There's a lot out there. There's Crest Pro Health, there's Listerine Zero. Just make sure whichever mouthwash you buy says antibacterial and kills bacteria, okay? And the last thing, sometimes if the bacteria really take a good hold, or if you've kind of been lazy about your brushing and it got to a state kind of like this where brushing alone won't remove all the bacteria, that's when you need a professional dental cleaning. You have to go to a dentist and they have special tools and special instruments to actually scrape off all the bacteria and to get deep into those gaps, and they can get deeper than you and I can at home. And the recommendation is to get a cleaning from a professional dentist twice a year, once every 6 months, which is super good if you could do it. If you can't make it twice a year, then try to at least go once a year. Get one professional dental cleaning a year to just get those really hard to reach bacteria out of your gums and keep your teeth healthy. Because trust me, man, teeth are so important. They're not just for looks. People think, oh, it's the smile and all that, and it is. I mean, it's important for smiling because the first thing people see is our smile, and if we don't have a nice smile, if we're not happy with it, it's going to make our confidence go down. You know how many patients I have who come to my office, they say, Dr. Eric, I don't even go out anymore. I don't go see my family, I don't go see my friends. I've even missed weddings because I'm too embarrassed with how my teeth look. So yes, it really affects your emotional state and your self-esteem. So that's two. But two, it's really important for eating and functioning. If you can't chew your food properly, you're not gonna digest it properly. And if you don't digest it properly, you're not gonna get the nutrients out of that food like you're meant to. And it's gonna affect your health that way. And there's more other reasons why teeth are really important, and I'll get to those in future episodes, but just remember those two for now. Taking care of your teeth is one of those things that if you do it, it's easy and it's cheap to do it at home. But if you neglect it, it could like blow up and cost you so much money and so much pain. So it's one of those things that's very easy to prevent if you do it, but if you don't, it's going to have very bad consequences. So to finish up, I just want to show you how to brush properly to prevent gingivitis. First of all, when you get a toothbrush, make sure, please, it's a soft bristle toothbrush. Don't ever buy a hard bristle toothbrush. It's going to harm your teeth, it's going to harm your gums. You want it to be soft. And another question I got was, is it okay to brush 6 times a day? No, there is something called overbrushing, and overbrushing is damaging and it's harmful and it could destroy your gums and destroy your teeth. Twice a day, okay? You do not need to brush more than twice a day. Now, when you brush, some people make the mistake and all they do is they brush the white part of the tooth, which is good. I mean, it's good. You have to brush everything, but not just the white part. Because if you're just brushing the white part, that's going to prevent cavities, but it's not necessarily going to prevent gingivitis. Why? Because we already said that those bacteria don't just sit on the white part, they go inside the gaps underneath the teeth. So to brush properly, you take your toothbrush and you want it to be at a 45-degree angle between the gums and the tooth so that the bristles of the brush are angled towards the gaps like that. Can you see that? And that way when you brush, the bristles are actually reaching into those gaps and pushing those bacteria out of the gaps. So always remember, 45 degrees angle, right at the gum line, aiming for the gaps inside, okay? And you want to do nice small strokes back and forth, okay, all throughout. 45-degree angle between the gums and the teeth all around. That's super important. That's the best way to prevent gingivitis, and if you have gingivitis, to cure it. Now on the inside, it's the same thing. You want to try to get to that you want to try to get into that gap between the gum tissue and the tooth, and then it's hardest in the very front because we can't really do that. So what you do is you just take it in an upward fashion, and you go like this, and you go up and down in nice small strokes. Okay. So just remember, you're aiming for the bacteria in the gaps, not just the bacteria on the white aspect of the teeth, which is very important. You got to get everything, but don't forget the gaps. Okay, so and after you finish the gaps, you could brush all the white surfaces, which is fine, but you have to brush inside. You have to brush on the gums in the junction between the teeth and the gums. Sorry for talking so much. I like to be very thorough. I repeat myself a lot because I really need my patients to understand what I'm saying. And in my experience, I have to repeat myself a lot to get the point across. I apologize for that. It's just the way I teach. I hope you guys learned something like you did last time. As some of you guys have mentioned in the comments, I do have a very, very busy schedule with my patients and my business. So I'm trying my hardest, with the help of my brother Yusuf, which without him, this channel would be impossible. Okay, so a lot of props goes out to Yusuf, and thanks to him, we're trying our hardest to at least get a video out every Thursday. So hopefully I'll see you guys next Thursday for our weekly episode. And until next Thursday, as always, stay healthy and stay strong.